Hello Nippies, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, hi, hello, I'm Nips, a freelance artist, and I apologize that I haven't uploaded in the last couple weeks. It's been kind of busy with a lot of commissions, so I haven't had time to make some unique videos. Speaking of commissions, this is one of them. I was fortunate enough to have my characters commissioned in a really big illustration, which took me quite some time. We did like 4 or 5 8-hour streams, so thank you to everyone for coming. So this illustration is going to be of my two characters, Anya and Pim, from my 18 plus comic OFFcell. Of course, be careful when you go read it. It is 18 plus. There's a lot of not safe for work, heavy topics. And I think one of the things that I talked about on this stream was how different a lot of the characters feel outside of the comic and how I treat them kind of like an alternate universe when I draw them, just kind of having fun outside the comic. And it just helps spread the word of the story, and it just kind of like an escapist enjoyment of the cast, fun and casual while still kind of remaining in character. But so once you read the story, things will definitely be very, very different than they probably feel outside and you see all these casual drawings. This drawing is going to be mostly an Anya setting. The commissioner wanted them to be eating ramen, which is just such a cute idea, and Pim and Anya's dynamic in general tends to be pretty like fun, competitive, kind of like fun rivals, loud, noisy rivals, and so I kind of wanted to implement that into the ramen shop scene. So they'll be not only eating ramen, but basically fighting over food, and just in general, lots of movement, lots of warm colors, and lots of fun. At the beginning, you saw that I did some thumbnails. I took the one that I liked and I just blew it up. And then after that, I laid down my perspective lines and I set some sample colors for the background. And so here you have me going in with another sketch layer to refine the kind of person blocks that I had before. I'm usually pretty bad at putting people in backgrounds. I can either do one or the other, but it's usually pretty hard for me to do both. So in this one, I kind of had to put the blocks, like still rectangles, for the people placeholders, and then just kind of fit Anya and Pim in there. For really large illustrations like this one, I tend to want to do like a color sample, like just moods, color schemes, shadows, lighting, etc., just to get an idea of what the piece is gonna kind of look like towards the end. It just helps with having the bigger picture in mind as I'm working. So here you'll see that I'm kind of in the sketch layer, just plotting out where the light sources are gonna be, what moods and temperatures are going to be where, the general composition, the general design of the background as well, just warping, transforming, and moving everything until it kind of just makes sense. The designs and colors here are mostly teal and orange. And in Anya's lore, Anya is from a clan whose logo is this circle, this kind of like 6-pieced, I don't even know what to call it. It's divided in 6. It's a circle divided in 6. And that logo is based off a flower, a 6-petaled flower, which is cyan in color, and it has like an orange center. And so I decided to make this ramen shop basically themed around all of that. And so you'll see lots of oranges, cyans, and the dark kind of bluish green color that is the color of the logo. It's just fun to create a themed kind of restaurant around her lore. In the upper right hand corner, you'll see a drawing of Anya that I did a really long time ago in watercolor of a kimono design with those elements, the flower in her obi, and then the clan logo all over half of the kimono. I thought this would be a really fun time and opportunity to include it into the drawing, and so as a hairpiece she has like a metal like jewel version of the flower, and then you'll see me later kind of put a little bouquet of those flowers as well. Then you'll see also the cyan like blue dango that she eats, which is just anime lore, you know, it's cyan because it's made out of the flowers, which are also cyan, so just some cute fun lore into the drawing. I really wanted this drawing to move, to like really be full of movement. So there's a lot of exaggerated elements. We've got the ramen just floating and moving everywhere, and then the noodles coming out of Anya's mouth. We have Pim just pushing her head to the side, and then Anya and Pim battling it out for the egg in the back. I don't know if anyone else does this, and I don't know if anyone can relate, but when I do drawings, one of my favorite things to do is to increase the complexity as the drawing is going on. And so with every new layer of the drawing, I like to add more and more things. So for example, like at the beginning, like if I draw someone sitting, then the next iteration of that sketch will be like sitting, but like maybe there's a muscle in their thigh that's like bent a certain way because of those specific way that they're sitting. And then in the next layer, it's like part of the pant is like bent a certain way. You know what I mean? Like it just gets more and more complex as the drawing goes. And it's kind of just those little tiny nuances I think are my favorite thing to do, because it just makes the drawings that much more realistic. For example, like this hand pushing on Anya's face was so fun because you get to like, you know, really squish her face, and then, you know, the noodles in her cheek, making her cheek look bigger, and then the mouth folds of her like trying to keep the noodles in kind of, and all of that is just so fun. For this piece, one of my biggest struggles, as usual, was going to be not messing up the lines. And I say this almost every single voiceover. I don't think it ever carries as much weight as it does for like really big illustrations, because on really big illustrations, I really feel this need to go all out. And so I put extra time and care and attention into my lines, only to sometimes just ruin them. And I don't say that in a kind of like self-deprecating way. I mean like trying to extract the potential out of your lines and making them, you know how like color theory, like there's an objective science to color theory. Well, I think in that same fashion, I feel like there's, at least for me, there's a way to optimize the usage of your lines and how to color them in a way that will accentuate them and enhance them, as well as enhance your colors without both of them clashing, if that makes any sense. I knew that this piece, in the initial iteration of the lines, as you'll probably start to notice here, there's just a lot going on. There's the ramen in the front, all the stuff coming out of the ramen bowl. You've got Anya, the kimono, her hair, the hair piece that she's gonna have dangling off, and then the hands battling it out in the back, Pim, the noodles coming out of Anya's mouth. There's just a lot going on. And so I already knew that not only would I have to make sure that my color theory was at least somewhat acceptable, or if if it wasn't acceptable, that I at least could fake it, but that also I would have to change the color of the lines so that I could push things into the background and bring things into the foreground. I tried my best not to get too stressed out at this point. At this point, I took pictures of my hands and brought chopsticks and plates over to my desk to make sure that I could at least get the hands in the correct position, which is always fun. I always like making things look as realistic as possible. You'll notice here that, like I said before, I had an original pose and then I wanted to add a little bit more flair and more dynamism, so I brought her pinky out, make things look a little bit more fun and exciting, I guess. And then you'll notice that I go ahead and start moving on to the arm, and I don't know if you'll notice, but at this point I haven't really added too much line weight to the drawing. So one of the things that I feel like, at least for me, and I know artists will do it a different way, but the weight of your lines can really bring things into the foreground and push them into the background. And so I usually like to save it as much. Sometimes I get a little carried away in the moment, but usually I like to save it for the end, just so that I can get a good picture of where everything is, and then I'll start making lines thicker and thinner. Ideally, what I like to do is things closer to the foreground, get darker lines. That's not always true, because as you'll probably see here, I don't know when I start doing it, but things that I don't want to be super obvious will usually get thinner lines. For example, Pim's lines should be darker than the noodles coming out of Anya's mouth, but they shouldn't be darker than the ramen bowl in the front, if that makes any sense. So even though Pim is further away from the camera than the noodles in Anya's mouth, I do want him to be darker because I want us to focus on him more than the noodles, if that makes any sense. I kind of did something similar with the hair pendant, which still isn't, I still haven't drawn it here, but I tried to do the same thing with the hair pendant that's floating in front of Anya, where I tried not to make it too bold because I didn't want it to stand out too much. I just wanted it to be something that was like rushing in the front of the screen. Now you'll see me work on the midground here. Now, in really, really big pieces, I typically will divide it in depending on where in space they are. So for example, I put Pim and Anya and the ramen bowl in the front in the foreground. Then this kind of like ramen table stand area with the flowers as the midground, and then I put the wall and the ceiling in the background. So I had 3 separate folders for those things because I don't know if it happens to anyone else, but sometimes I'm doing lines and I'll want to like move an object or a prop or a person, and then I can't really move them because I've put the lines all on one layer. Sometimes it's easier for me to be like, okay, this is my foreground. Everything that encompasses the foreground, including the lines and the color and everything, is there, so that if I move something in the background or in the midground, it can slide very seamlessly behind my foreground. So that way, if I'm drawing things like in the ceiling or in the walls behind them, I don't have to worry about like redrawing them or moving them or anything. I can just keep drawing behind them. For really complex pieces, I tend to have lots and lots of layers, which, speaking of, somebody in chat while I was streaming this taught me about smart objects, which I don't know if any of you guys know what that is, but if you do, I have finally joined you in the extremely useful world of smart objects. This is what I'm saying. We learn things every day. So apparently you can convert folders or sets of layers into something called a smart object if you right click it. And what it'll do is basically, if your file's already too big and you want to work on something, but the file is super big and it's kind of hurting your computer a bit, you can convert, for example, a group into a smart object. And when you click it, you double click it, it'll open it as a new file. That way you can work on that isolated section by itself. That was super, super useful. It took me a bit to understand what was going on, but once I basically had the base of everything, I duplicated the necessary layers and I turned it into a smart object, and I worked on that until the end of the piece. And it was just so helpful. So, you know, you learn something every day. And if you don't know what it is, I highly encourage you to look it up because it definitely changed the game for me. So here I am working on the flat colors. Now, you'll notice that a lot of the patterns, I think I've talked about it before, where a lot of clothing patterns, clothing in general, or even just like background props, things I'm not typically good at designing, at least for me, will be much easier to do if I do it in colors first. So as opposed to sketching with lines, I sketch with like blocks with silhouettes of color, and it's easier for me to visualize how much space things take up and how things will look in the end. And then I'll do the lines on top of that. So here you'll see me doing the lines of the designs as opposed to going straight in with lines, if that makes any sense. Here you'll see me just kind of put all of the silhouettes of the shapes on the kimonos and then just jumping around to other areas of the piece. Once I got pretty much comfortable with the flats on the foreground, I decided to move over to the midground and start line arting the flowers, the little doorway section there with the banner, the flag, I'm not sure what to call it, kind of like a curtain, and then the table, all the sauces, the little papers on the wall, the designs of the bowls, and slowly but surely the drawing just starts coming to life. The ramen was probably one of the hardest things in this piece. I absolutely do not know how to color food properly, and I was just thinking of like the anime, like Food Wars, and just all of those like really yummy food depictions in anime and movies, and I was hoping that it would come out that way, and I don't think I did the job entirely properly, but I tried. The effort was definitely there. Here you'll see me adding borders. Now this is one of my favorite things to do in really complex pieces, is separate things into spaces in dimensions, like separate them into their own compartments in space so that they don't blend in too much. And so what I'll do is just I'll outline things that are overlapping to make sure that they stand out. And usually I'll do it in white first, in just pure white, so that way I can see what I'm doing. And here you'll see that I just leave it in pure white for now because I start doing like the samples of the colors of the shadows, and then I'll swap the colors. So you'll see me later swap the whites into like some cyan, some darker blues, some oranges, some peaches. Some I leave pretty much white, but in general I don't like to go pure white. Once that is done, then I will start doing the actual shadows. the actual shading process, for those of you that have seen me draw like big illustrations will know that I love using the lasso tool. The lasso tool is like one of my favorite things to use for like refined, at least what I like to call for myself, like refined illustrations. I don't typically use this method for sketches. It's more so for really big pieces that I know I'm going to spend a lot of time on. I feel like it just makes the drawing looks so like soft. So what I do is I'll just lasso a certain area and then use the like round fuzzy brush and just kind of gradient it in different directions. And it's so satisfying, like knowing where to lasso and just making everything a gradient essentially. So yeah, I absolutely love that. So here I made a black and white layer where I filled it in white and then set the layer property to color. So that way it's just an easy way to make it black and white, just so that I could check the values. And while I did that, I started making things opaque, doing my backlighting. So here you'll see me do like a screen layer, making things a little bit lighter from the back to kind of balance out the harsh lighting coming from the other side. You'll see me add very desaturated light parts, for example, between Anya's chest and Pim's chest as well, just putting a really light desaturated color there to separate them so that they feel like there's distance between them, you know? So you'll see me putting that around the piece and really starting to balance things out. This is the area where I say that color theory is so essential, and it's basically what I winged. I think that my color theory is just not where it needs to be for how long I've been drawing, and so for this piece I kind of wing it. Like I have an idea. I know that, like, you know, you want your warms to be mostly in the front, especially for the type of drawing this is. It's a very happy and fun drawing, so I don't want like too many blues. I want to make sure that the blues are more so like to separate the layers and used more in the back, and just kind of spacing out the colors that way. So you'll notice even when I'm trying to explain it that I don't really know what I'm saying. I just kind of like fake it till you make it, all right? So I really did try my best to do what I could with the knowledge that I had on color theory. Once I added quite a bit of shadowing to Anya and Pim, I decided to finally finish up the lines for the background, which were these really cute lanterns that I got some inspiration from on Pinterest, and I decided to change the color and make them the color of Anya's clan. You'll see me mess around with blurring the background, trying to really push it back there, and I'm really struggling at this point to find out what types of colors need to go where in order for the drawing to feel finished. So a lot of the times with these really complicated drawings, my biggest problem is finishing them, like really looking at them and saying, this is a finished product. So I try my best to jump around the piece and try not to worry so much about quote unquote finishing it, but more so about like going with the flow and just what feels right. I don't know if that makes any sense, because I feel like at this point, the less I think, the better. So I was just kind of going. Oh my God. I guess not a very smart and educated thing, I guess. Just kind of go. I am not super disappointed with how it came out. I'm trying to make myself like it. This piece took around 50 hours and I streamed all of it except that 1 or 2 hours off stream trying to finish it. But this piece did take a very long time. I'm proud insofar as like I'm proud of the knowledge and the experience that I gained from the piece, and the fact that after what seems like so long, I finally finished a drawing at this caliber. I don't make as many of these as I used to, so I am very proud of that. I do intend to learn more in the future. I do intend to hopefully get better and maybe stop winging things so much. I'm proud of the background. I'm proud that I designed a background, that I drew them in it. I drew props. I tried my best to apply some sort of color theory. The movement, I love the characters. It was just such a fun piece overall, especially just streaming it. The time just flew by. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the commentary. If you guys are curious about the PSD and breaking down the layers, that would be a fun video if you guys are interested in that. I know you guys, this video is already really long, so I don't think you want to hear me talk about this piece anymore. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know down below. Let me know what you thought about the video. Let me know what you thought about the piece. Let me know what kind of content you guys would like to see. I'm a little bit busy right now, but I will try my best to write it down and keep it in mind. The pre-orders for the poster of this piece is available in my shop, so I will link that down below if you guys are interested in snagging a copy. And of course, the comic is free to read online at OFFcellcomic.com. It is 18+, so please be careful with that. I do have a little item in my shop for chapter 4. I am working on the next chapter, and if you guys want sneak peeks of the process, of the panels, the sketches, the concept art, and everything, I will link all that down below. And if you like the video, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, join the Nippy family. The more, the merrier. And hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next video. Bye.